It's a huge pleasure to be at CogX in the first panel session that's ever talked about photonics. Lots of people say, what is photonics? Well, it's anything to do with light. Technologies, innovations, products, anything that involves this stuff, right? And it's one of the fundamental senses, 5 senses of the human brain. It's something that's fascinated innovators for a long time. The first treatise in optics is rumored to have been written by Euclid in about 300 BC. So we've had a little innovation going on for a couple of years. It helps us along. Somewhere Galileo thought about telescopes. James Clerk Maxwell theorized it. And then you note the subtle shift to geography there, back to Scotland. So photonics has been around a long time, but it's something that empowers us all every day in ways we don't realize. It's the technology that makes the internet work. I'm proud to have been involved in engineering things that transmit about 40% of all data traffic globally every single day. It's something that every time you go to hospital, the thing that says whether you're sick or not, the white blood cell count, that's driven by optics. It's the lasers that cut and weld your car. It comes to us everywhere. Globally, it's about a $700 billion industry. In the UK, it's about £15 billion, employs about 79,000 people, according to our latest studies in the UK, engineering those products. And they're increasingly getting to very interesting places, consumers, AR, VR. And that brings us around to this topic. How do you get photonics from the stage it is now, which is a bit like the early stages of electronics before you had integrated transistors, to the next stage where you can ubiquitously churn out innovations in a very short space of time? And that's where I'm going to pass over to Cillian to explain the integrated photonics thing that is up on the stage. Cillian.
Thank you, John. So my name is Cillian. I'm a photonic technologist at Digital Catapult. So at DC, Digital Catapult, we accelerate the adoption of technology via collaboration and innovation. So I focus on light-based tech, photonics. So as John was saying, photonics, massive industry, but when we think of photonic components, we think of lasers, fiber optics, detectors. Integrated photonics essentially is all about shrinking those down, integrating them onto a substrate and onto a chip that allows, say, for better performance, greater reliability, lower energy consumption. So creating essentially on-chip photonics is our goal. So in a similar respect to integrated electronic circuits, we can develop integrated photonic circuits, also called photonic chips, which, due to their very nature, they're incredibly compact. You could say put them on wearables, as well as increased functionality and greater performance. So because these can be developed, say, silicon-based chips, they can be produced using similar manufacturing techniques to the semicon industry for electronic chips on the silicon side of things. But there are also metal-based systems where we develop integrated components using nanoscale metal components, which are termed plasmonic components. And in plasmonic side of things, we can, say, confine light into an extremely small volume, for example, to increase data storage, as developed by Seagate and their HAMR technology, as well as for sensing, the biosensing as a Causeway sensors for accelerating drug discovery. So we've got this raft of technologies in integrated photonics. The core market at the moment, so datacom, so it's transceivers in data centers. But with the ever-increasing production of data and need for faster networks, there need to be new photonic technologies to really avail of the bandwidth, avail of the low energy consumption. So integrated photonics exists on the communication side of things, but there are many opportunities for emerging applications. For example, in sensing, as I was saying, on biosensing, say for continuous health monitoring, lab on a chip. There's also work being done on chip LiDAR for autonomous vehicles, inertial sensing for navigation, sensors for industrial automation, as well as monitoring the health of infrastructure. So sensing is a big core application for integrated photonics, but of course, computing, it's very fitting to be talking today. For photonics, massively parallel, massively fast, very suited towards, for example, new computing architectures, could be neuromorphic computing, as we saw yesterday. There's a session in terms of very low energy consumption for AI applications. So far, I've just been focusing on classical applications for integrated photonics, but of course, it underpins and has many opportunities on the quantum side. on the three core pillars. That'll be sensing, communication, and computing. So here, the quantum technologies can avail of the scalability of integrated photonics, as well as the compactness and being incredibly robust. So there's many, many applications. We can think of integrated photonics cutting across, say, semiconductors, of course, AI, enabling, as well as optical commons, which is very well established, the medical side of things. It's very, very broad and a core pillar for the UK in photonics. Moreover, Digital Catapult and Yelo and Causeway and John as well, taking part in the Smart Nano NI consortium. So this consortium, based in NI, really has a wealth of expertise in integrated photonics and nanotechnology, as well as manufacturing and data analysis. So as part of this, we are developing new photonic technologies. The aim is to have 100 prototypes over the lifetime of the project, 6 products by the end. So it's a really core project building up the photonics cluster, and also at Digital Catapult, we're running programs to accelerate the adoption of photonics amongst other digital technologies, say for manufacturing. So we have a program running soon. I'm happy to talk about that more later. So there's a lot to get through today. I'm very happy to get through the opportunities and challenges for integrated photonics.
Thank you, Cillian. And I'm very pleased to be joined by two others who represent, between Kate and David, the yin and yang of with Kate, a very established company. Yelo is one of the most important companies globally in enabling the integrated photonics. A small company in Carrickfergus, without which we wouldn't have the internet. And that's a fundamentally and very important point. Kate, talk to us a little about what Yelo do, what you do, and the issues of serving that manufacturing beast that is the global data center world.
So I'm Katie. I'm the optical physicist at Yelo. We design and build test equipment for a range of applications, including photonics. So I work mostly on the photonics side of things, helping with the design. I help doing some of the simulations and integrate with our engineers so that they know how we can make our systems as good as they can be. And that's why I've come on board to sort of facilitate improving that. And as time goes on, and the device densities on wafers there's an increase. That's really what we're looking at now. That's, I think, that's our big challenge at the moment, is the devices get smaller, testing gets harder.
Thank you. And that's a very important point. If we want to serve consumers, we have to make not tens of devices, not millions, billions of devices. You can't afford to make billions of devices unless you can make tens of thousands at a time. That's a massive parallelism. But if then somebody says, could you test each and every one, and the test cycle takes half an hour, you can't afford that much time, right? We would be long and grey, and the adoption cycles will be over. So how you do that and how you resolve that is one of these key things.
Yep.
At the opposite end of this spectrum, we have the people who make systems, products that deliver value to people. And Causeway Sensor is a great example of a company spinning out of university, trying to make a name for itself, trying to work out how to add value to customers and resolve the classic problems of, well, I really need to make some money this week and send an invoice this week, but actually I also want to grow a very large company long term. Those are challenges. David, talk to us about those challenges.
Great to be here, everybody. I'm David Kane, lead engineer at Causeway Sensors. And Causeway Sensors, as John was hinting at, what we do is produce protein sensors. And the importance of that is that a lot of the therapeutics that are coming down the line these days in medicine are being grown in bioreactors. And you need to understand what's going on in those bioreactors to actually put out something that's an effective product and put it out at an economical value. And what we're doing is allowing the user to understand what's going on in those bioreactors better than ever before. And at the heart of that is a photonic chip. So my role in Causeway really is kind of the glue. I basically provide the opportunity for the biologists and the chemists and the physicists to all work together to produce this thing. And as John was saying, we are a university spin-out, and I think I'll get an opportunity maybe a little later on to talk more about some of the advantages and disadvantages of that. But it really is a bit of a journey in Northern Ireland at the moment in the photonics sector, because we have so much support from UKRI, and because we have such a rapidly growing ecosystem, it's really a great time to be involved in it.
Thank you, David. And that's a good illustration. People think, what's the direct market of, say, photonics innovation? And actually, the direct market is small relative to the impacted market. If we can do things that enable you to make drugs faster, innovate drugs faster, that secondary impact is phenomenal. The leverage is enormous. And indeed, globally, we think of photonics as a $700 billion industry, but the industry enabled by photonics is sized by my good friends at SPIE at some $2 trillion and growing rapidly, and that's because of the diversity of places we get to. And one of the key things as we innovate, even a technology that's been around a long time, and especially as we get to this new generation of integrated photonics, is how do we get products to market? How can we not spend 10 years innovating something, but do it in 1 year? And there are two aspects to that. There are how do we make things reliably, test them, produce them, and manufacture them? And then how can we accelerate innovation out of universities? And how do we support that? Cillian, talk to us about what Smart Nano is trying to do to help that ecosystem move faster.
It's to essentially lower the barriers. So if you want to get companies coming together, cooperating amongst themselves, it's really ensuring collaboration between different partners, and each of us has a respective focus area. So Causeway, the end applications, Yelo, in terms of testing, us in terms of developing programs that allow external companies to interface with the ecosystem that we're growing, and to essentially prototype solutions to internal challenges. So it's reaching out beyond the consortium, which is crucial. So not only are we building stronger links amongst ourselves, complementing each other in terms of our respective focus areas, it's also engaging more widely and getting companies in. And then that helps nurture the ecosystem, grows it over time, and yeah, we see real results.
And it's fascinating. I've been to a number of their meetings in Northern Ireland. And what's nice is when you have somebody coming from the AI machine learning community who has no knowledge of optics, linking up with somebody doing sensors technology and manufacturing technology with an end user who's going, I just want a box that works better. Right? And the end users don't really care, of course, what's inside the box. They just want benefits.
Exactly. Yeah.
David, talk about this journey of trying to take an innovation that comes out of a university and turn it into something that offers those black box benefits that the customer doesn't care how it works, and your engineers care passionately about how it works, so do the academics. What are the emerging and new challenges? Many of them are well known, bridging the gap and getting over the innovation gap. But what do you see are the newer challenges that are emerging in the most recent years?
Well, I suppose one of the big challenges, certainly that we faced, was we spun out the physics department at Queen's University Belfast, and originally, so we kind of joke that we were a physics company, and then we became a surface chemistry company, and then we became, and currently are, a biology company, and with the new round of development, we're going to be a physics company again. And what I mean by that is that it really is a multidisciplinary effort. You know, the innovation that we spun out with was very much physics. It was a nanophotonic sensor. It was the know-how on how to build this nanostructured array of rods, and it was very much focused on the physics. It was the materials deposition. It was the light interactions, very well understood, papers published, academics pleased. And then you sort of sit and you go, we have this thing that we can see is actually very useful. So we should probably, productize that. We should probably bring that out into the commercial market, see if there's a use for it. And there were a number of pathways that we could have taken. We ended up settling on biological sensors. Although, funnily enough, jewelry was actually one of the initial ideas, because these surfaces are beautifully iridescent. But once you've done that, well, now you're in the biology arena, and to get there first, as I said, you actually need to look at the surface chemistry. You need to look at how those assays are bound to the surface. So you need to bring chemists in. And then whenever you're actually looking at the bioreactors and you're trying to understand, how we can sense what is going on, that's the realm of the biologists. So it really is this sort of very multidisciplinary approach. And the disadvantage in some academic environments is that you are literally sitting in a physics department. They're not really used to working with, some of the risks associated with biology, for example. We did a project recently, and I can't say exactly what it was for proprietary reasons, but there was a slightly enhanced risk profile that in a biology department They wouldn't have blinked an eyelid. And in the physics department, they're sitting kind of going, we don't know how to deal with this. And it's the same over in biology. They get a little bit nervous about, class 4 lasers sitting out open on a workbench, even if it's in a shielded room and so on and so forth. So really, one of the things that we sort of need to concentrate on to help that innovation grow is being able to join those departments even better than they are already. And don't get me wrong, universities are quite good at working in an interdisciplinary fashion, but there are still those walls that are built up, even purely because these departments are literally in different buildings in different areas. And I think one of the key actors to kind of get that going is the University Innovation Services. And I have to say, I didn't think I would be singing the praises of University Investment Service, because quite often you'll hear startups complain about them. But the one at Queen's is actually very good about trying to introduce people and trying to glue together one academic from one side and be able to sort of allow them to help with another. And of course, the consortium is a really, really major driver in our successes, because it allows us to unlock a lot more partnerships in industry as well. And if I can just add something that Cillian was saying earlier, if you're looking at establishing a consortium, or you're sort of involved in the organization of one, really the key thing that's going to make it work, and that has happened with Smart Nano, I'm very glad to say, is your companies and your academic organizations should be complementary. They shouldn't have overlap if you can avoid it. If we were another photonics test company, for proprietary reasons, I probably wouldn't be able to be as open with Katie as I am, and vice versa. Whereas we're able to very much approach each other as colleagues, despite the fact that we're from different organizations and companies, and that is immensely helpful.
Thank you, David. Katie, interesting, because the contrast to Yelo, when was Yelo established? I can't remember.
40 years ago, so
40 years
40th
ago.
anniversary this year.
Richard, who's the CEO, I know, he's been there almost that entire time.
Yeah, he has, yeah.
He still writes most of the software code, I believe.
Yes, he's still very much, very hands-on.
What do you see, as a company that's been in the business a long time, has an extremely strong reputation, if you're in the niche that knows about it. What do you see the challenges from you of meeting the very rapid pace of change that you see in getting stuff out, manufacturing, and meeting that demand curve?
I think, certainly within Smart Nano, one of the things that we've really benefited from is utilizing simulation software. And that means we can now test our ideas, at least in simulation, and it guides our direction much more, and it's much cheaper and much faster than us having to physically try things and then see what happens. And as everything gets smaller, things become much more difficult to machine, much more difficult to integrate, much more difficult to make. So the ability to use that simulation and then speak to the other people in the consortium who've worked not on the same things, but on similar things on a similar scale, that sort of micro nanoscale, it becomes very difficult at those sort of levels. And so I think, certainly using the simulation has helped us, even in the year that I've been there. We've been able to accelerate how quickly we can come up with the solutions in-house, and I think that they're much better solutions maybe than they had previously been, or would have been, without that sort of direction from
it's
exploring
an interesting
physics.
Process of looking what is essentially digital twinning, right, in the manufacturing environment to speed the manufacturing process up and deliver faster solutions. I think we underestimate how much I think people are using digital twinning, even at small manufacturing companies, as part of their standard processes these days.
Yeah, and it allows me to sometimes I come up with some solutions and I take it back to some of the mechanical engineers and they tell me it's never going to be feasible. So, it's...
So I wanted to take a step up for a second and look at the slightly bigger view. Integrated photonics is this whole process, just like integrated electronics, of putting many things in a chiplets, joining them together. I'm personally involved in helping support the government on the national semiconductor infrastructure strategy at the moment and trying to work out where we can add value. So one of the key questions there is, where do you think integrated photonics will be going in the next decade, and what are the parallels and differences to the magic world of semiconductors? David?
Yeah, so it's an interesting question, and actually, so one of the issues actually touches a little bit on what Katie just said. One of the issues that we have as a startup, for example, is that if you walk into an optics lab, if you walk into a photonics lab, you'll see pretty much all of the experiments are set up on optics tables. They're on breadboards, and these are kind of vibration-isolated tables that you can slot these kind of pre-made components into. And there's a few sort of major leaders, Thor Labs and so on. There's a lot of famous names, and you buy those optical components in, and you've got a very, very wide choice. And you put those all on the table and you can do your experiment. And whenever you want to actually shrink that into something that's more like a product, then it starts to become difficult. And I think one of the things that the semiconductor industry has not so much an issue with, but you go through simulating, an experiment in your case, a circuit, an integrated circuit in a semiconductor case, and you can get so far with that before you actually have to tape the design out, and you have to go into a fab and you have to spend really quite a lot of money. And one of the issues I think that photonics has going forwards and is going to, the solutions to which will change the landscape, is that we currently don't really have that same pathway where if you want to take your integrated circuit design, you can go to maybe an older process node running in a fab that's no longer really at huge capacity, and they'll kind of say, sure, we can do you a few thousand units, we can tape that out for you, we'll do a deal, it's not going to cost you too much. Whereas I think that to jump from the kind of the macro scale of the optical components on the breadboard down to an integrated device that's sitting at chip scale is still quite difficult in the photonics industry. That's one of the things that the Smart Nano labs are helping to facilitate that process, because we're getting in a lot of equipment that is allowing us to do that chip scale prototyping, so that then we can take it out to some of the larger manufacturers and sort of, quite frankly, know what we're doing and have that design much better illustrated and kind of frozen before we have to take it out and spend major money. But I think bridging that gap and getting that kind of more incremental approach to manufacturing is going to be crucial for a lot of small photonics companies.
Cillian, you've interacted with a lot of companies who are fascinated to know how that they can work with Smart Nano, partly because Smart Nano is well-funded, so that attracts people to say you're a well-funded consortium. How can we work with you? In that sense, what would you say people are coming to you and seeing and saying that they see the benefits of integrated photonics as a preconception, and then after they've talked to you, where are they taking those preconceptions forward? What are they seeing change after they talk to you?
Well, for integrated photonics, so at the moment, it's very much data comms. This is where integrated photonics is. And just going back to also on David's side, like looking to the future, it's going to be more sensing. It's going to be more on the computing side. So it's getting towards those high volume markets that potentially help grow integrated photonics, just to target those. So that could be in sensing, it could be in AR, VR, it could be in on-chip LiDAR. So it's making people aware of what is the potential of integrated photonics. That's what's coming to us in Smart Nano. It says, this is what you can do. This is what you can build. This is the potential new functionality you can develop as a result of combining all your components onto a chip. So they may not have the expertise, and it's often the case and across photonics generally, is in creating, like, you need expertise in terms of that integration piece. So you have an on-chip, like a benchtop system, translating that into an on-chip. That's a very different challenge. So coming to us, learning how you could potentially do that. A big key here, and comparing it to the electronic side of things, we need to have again closer collaboration along the value chain. So we start with design, you go to manufacturing, you go to verification, and then development into product, into an application. It's making that as smooth as possible. Say a company comes along, they want to develop a prototype product, but it may be difficult for them to navigate through that ecosystem. So it's important, I think, looking to the future to make that as seamless as possible. So they come to us, come to Smart Nano, and learn about how you can potentially create a prototype product. So it's really, again, as I was mentioning earlier, lowering those barriers and training, design. And so, because integrated photonics is very immature in the design space compared to integrated electronics, there's a need also for standardization. So there's a lot of work to be done to make it as more mature, to bring it up to the maturity of electronics. So there are many, many angles that come at this, but I think the key takeaway is that seamless interaction across the value chain.
So we're getting close to time, but I'm going to put some question that I love because I like the way that one can have influence, and say, Katie, you're earlier in the process of getting through the career and engaging in Yelo and doing things than many. What would you like to be your long-term impact from being involved in this new generation, this new revolution? If you look 25, 30 years out, what would you like to stand up and say, I'm proud to have achieved?
I think on-wafer testing really is what we're looking at, being able to test thousands of devices quickly, or hundreds of thousands of devices quickly on wafer. And that sounds very simple, but actually being able to do that is very, very difficult, very complicated. And as, like I say, as device sizes decrease and the volume of testing increases, it gets more and more challenging. And I think that's the trajectory of Yelo over the next few decades, is to be able to do that.
David, what would you like your legacy to be?
Well, certainly in the Northern Irish context, I think that really we want Smart Nano to continue to grow the capabilities that are surrounding Belfast and Derry and the wider corridor in between. Because the more companies that you have, then the more companies that are directly involved in photonics, the more companies that you have supporting them, which means that it's much easier to start a small company involved in photonics, and so on and so forth, and that can really grow and snowball. And I think that is going well at the moment. What I would say is that there does need to be the continued good political leadership and vision that has occurred at places like UKRI, to notice that we have this capability and that it should be growing. And if that continues, then really the sky's the limit.
Yeah, and it's notable, there are about 1,200 companies involved in photonics in the UK, and we create about another 25 to 30 every single year in the UK. That's the birth rate. I tracked it for over 40 years. We've tracked that birth rate, and it's been extremely consistent over that time. I think one of the things to add, and I would like to do, is to add to that, we send all our data around the world with optical fiber. We will very soon be going to a world where we store all our data, again back using optics, whether it's the long-term archive data storage that our friends at Microsoft are working in Project Silica, where they burn data into little glass disks, or whether it's the medium-term data storage that people like Seagate are working on through this new optically assisted hammer process, heat-assisted magnetic recording. And so it won't be long before data moves around the world with optics. It's stored with optics. It's archived with optics. But very soon we will also see it AI-enabled through optics. Optics is incredibly good at the matrix problems that are behind AI, a big theme of this week, and it will not be long before we see optical engines performing some of the key AI matrix functions that are necessary in mass machining learning programs. So I look forward to AI optics being in the processor as well as everywhere else. So that's a fun thing. Cillian, I'm going to turn to you just for some wrap-up comments.
Yep, I think it's been a great session. We've covered quite a lot from the startup journey, testing, a wider view of the photonics landscape. It's integrated photonics is a fascinating area with many, many applications we've spoken quite a lot about. The emerging applications, potential high-volume markets, AI, quantum, sensing. And as Smart Nano we're helping to grow this technology, to grow the cluster. So if you have any questions, definitely reach out to us if you want to talk about our work or how we could work together in the future. We're very open to dialogue and how we could collaborate beyond Smart Nano in the wider integrated photonics space. So I'd like to thank everybody. It's been a great session, and thank you very much.
And I'd say, yeah, if you need to know anything about the wider photonics space, I'm all ears. I'll be around, whether that's on a national basis or actually I do a great deal on the international space as well. So I'm very happy to field those questions, and we'll be wandering around in the next few minutes. Thank you all very much. Thank you for being here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.